not that. You see how that works? Yes? Well, this is an analytic statement, and this is a synthetic statement. And guess what? You could do the same thing with, well, for anything you pick, it's not that. There's an equivalent to that, and that is that, well, then it's not the case that there exists something that is that. Yes? For anything you pick, it's not that. Well, then it's not the case that there is something that is that. Yes? Okay? I can say it's not the case that for anything you pick, it is this. And that's equivalent to saying there exists something that is not that. Did I do that right? Remember, you see what's happening here is the negation sign that's not on this side comes over onto this side. So if this is affirmative and this is affirmative, then I have a negation and a negation. If I have one negation, then I have a negation and the negation goes away, right? You actually go through a rule, it's double negation, but you erase both of them when it's double negation. Over here I have one negation, no negation, and you see the opposite, and then of course the end up, the last one would be where I have a negation on both sides. It's not the case that for anything you pick, it's not that. That's equivalent to saying there exists one. There is one, right? So this is all the possible analytic synthetic statement types, and notice that there's an equivalence between them. So as a result, what Quine has demonstrated is that the analytic and synthetic forms of knowledge are actually one type of knowledge. And in a pragmatist sense, that's because we're always checking from moment to moment. We're never just totally trusting the past and saying that our analytic knowledge is always going to be true. No, if something happens and there's a black swan, well, we're ready inductively to change the things that we thought were knowledge and update it. So a pragmatist theory of meaning or understanding does away with the two dogmas of empiricism. There's no analytic view and synthetic view. Instead, as a pragmatist, you're constantly in this dialectical Hegelian mode of evolving what we know through experience, right? Is that fun? Did I do that well? If that's actually kind of complex. It's kind of a big deal in 1952 when he came out with this. That's what made him famous. He does explain it himself fairly well, of course. I think if I go to
most people take a dualist view of reality is to do with creeds or the other things that you've mentioned. I think it's chiefly because we all do have, seems to be, direct experience of an internal flow of thoughts and emotions and responses and desires and fantasies and memories and so on, which is going on all the time that we're awake, and which is extremely complex, not only in the sense that it may
so
be
that's Brian McGee,
things, but also in the sense that there may be several different things going on at once. And I think we're all directly aware of something like this going on inside ourselves. And this doesn't manifest itself in any way in observable external behavior.
We are aware of these things, and I'm not denying their existence, but I'm construing them or reconstruing them as activities on the part of physical objects, namely on our part. And the fact that these are not observable on the whole from the outside doesn't distinguish them from much that the physicist assumes in the way of internal microscopic or submicroscopic structure of inanimate objects. A great deal goes on that we don't observe from the outside and that we have to account
Broken. The internet.
for conjecturally. The important reason for construing all this activity as activity on the part of bodies is to preserve the closed character of the system of the physical world.
Does this mean that you deny the real existence of the age-old problem about whether or not we had free will?
It doesn't mean that, but because the will would retain its status, even though becoming ultimately a neural phenomenon and an aspect of the activity of a physical object. However, I think the problem with freedom of the will is an outcome of a confusion. There's no question in my mind about freedom of the will. The will is free in the sense that people very often do what they will to do. They are free within the limits of constraint, within the limits of their strength or talent, to do things that they will to do. Freedom of the will does not mean that the will is free to will as it will. That would be nonsense. And it doesn't mean that the will is uncaused. The will is caused. And we all are prepared to recognize that the will is caused when we try to train children in such a way as to influence their behavior, or enact laws to discourage criminals, or we try to get votes. People try to sell things. All these are cases of causing people to will, but the freedom of their will remains insofar as their activity is the result of a causal chain, one link of which is the willing, and that willing can be itself caused. It is.
Given that you hold these views, how do you see the traditional body-mind problem? I mean, let me just remind viewers of what that is. I mean, I've said earlier that most people seem to take a dualist view of reality, the view that everything in the universe consists ultimately of either minds or bodies, that there are both kinds of entity. And that has given rise to a traditional problem, which no one has ever come up with a thoroughly satisfactory solution to, and that is the question, how are these incorporeal, abstract, non-material minds able to actually move and push about the material bodies? Now, it's clear that you, since you don't believe in the existence of minds as independently of bodies, the problem does not present itself to you in that form. Do you, given your views, do you simply bypass the mind-body problem totally?
No. As you say, the body-mind problem doesn't exist in that form. There's no longer that problem of interaction, and in fact, it's in order to eliminate the problem in that form that I opt for physicalism. However, the problem then arises: how are we to talk about all these ordinarily so-called mental events and mental activity, all this flux of experience, if we're not recognizing minds, not recognizing mental entities? It's no good trying to paraphrase all this into neurological terms, because it would take too much in the way of detailed understanding of the mechanism of the nervous system. Now, there's as a first step, a quick, easy solution to that. One may simply keep the mentalistic terminology, but regard all these terms as terms applicable to bodies and to the activity of bodies. This is easy.
So I'll leave him at that point. I would like to mention that on Friday, Daniel Dennett died. Some of you were doing Daniel Dennett as your term paper. And I imagine Wikipedia already updated. He died April 19th, Friday. So that's a shame. Lots of good obituaries out on him, by the way. In fact, the biggest on the New York Times, which amazed me. I've never seen a philosopher get as large an obituary as they gave him. So that's kind of interesting. So, who else should we talk about today? Any questions? Or shall I see you then on Wednesday? By the way, Wednesday I have an appointment at 1:30, so I will have to leave immediately after class, if you don't mind. You can't miss it, because you know it's the military, and so they shoot you if you don't show up. Okay. Shall I end with some music? Want to hear What Was I Made For? We had a great conference this weekend, by the way. I don't know if any of you got to listen. I didn't recognize anyone. Well, I recognized lots of people at the conference, but I didn't recognize any current students at the conference. But we had a visitor from Northeastern University who talked about an ethical environment for artificial intelligence and big data. How can we make artificial intelligence and big data ethical? No real solutions, but kind of an interesting topic in light of what's going on. Plus, we had student papers. We had lots of student papers on Saturday, which were all fun. You guys enjoying this course, by the way? Getting stuff out of it? Yes? Okay. It's kind of like, just swimming along the top of the surface. You just cover the absolute basics of it. You're welcome to deep dive if you like. Any of these folks. I know one student had started reading Kierkegaard. I haven't heard from him since. That's scary. Beware, Kierkegaard could be dangerous to your mental health. Well, have a good lunch if you haven't eaten lunch already. I will be hanging around for a while today if you feel like coming up. But Wednesday, not. I have to leave right away. In fact, if I forget to do that on Wednesday, please somebody remind me. I've got to get over there.
Like a concrete date on there, so when is that one due?
By the end of the semester.
So as with the term paper too?
Yeah.
Okay, alright, thank you.
You're welcome. Robin. His speechification, through his oratory skills through a ministerial environment. And I'm sure you can hear it. You notice his emphasis on the syllable.
So, I know what it's
And he's pragmatist too, by the way.
Yeah, I know all of that is. I I had, some really good interview with him, and he said, oh man, this was
Thank you. Yeah, he's running for office here. Boy, he's one of the candidates for president. No one thinks he's got much of a shot.
and you're not,
It probably won't even influence the numbers the way RFK might. But he is running. He has a campaign, and he's, I don't think he's selected a vice presidential running mate yet. Yeah, look him up as a presidential candidate, and he's there. I don't think he thinks he's got a shot at all, but
not with their party candidate support right now.
yeah.
They're,
Although I'll tell you, there are at least some of the candidates that, I'd much rather have him.
yeah, he would make a good president,